is up, YouTube? My name is Alex. Welcome back to the Lifting Nomad. Over the last little bit, I've been staying in Paris, in France, close to the Eiffel Tower in the 6th arrondissement. And I wanted to give my thoughts and opinions as a foreigner, someone who does not speak French. We do learn it in Canada, but I can tell you not many Canadians, if you're outside of Quebec, speak anything decent French for the most part. So in this video, let's go through my thoughts on the city, what it would be like to live there as a digital nomad, the safety, the nightlife, the fitness culture, the food, all that good stuff. So without further ado, let's get into the video. All right, so when it comes to Paris, I will give this perspective as a Canadian traveling there. I went there fairly recently with my dad and I spent some time directly in the city, didn't go anywhere else in France, so I flew from Toronto directly into Paris and then flew from Paris to Split, Croatia, which is where I'm recording this video. Just landed here as well. So I am not going to try to speak any French. We spend like 9 years, it's mandatory as a Canadian to spend 9 years from like grade 4 until grade 9 or grade 2 until grade 9, I don't even really remember, learning French in our public school system. And the idea being that we would be somewhat fluent by the time we get to the workplace or high school and potentially want to explore it further. In hindsight, I probably should have taken better advantage of that schooling, as now that I've learned Spanish, it would have been a lot easier, I think, if I had known somewhat decent French. So maybe I could have kept going through high school, maybe did like a minor in university. But you know what? That ship has sailed, so we're on to bigger and better things. So I stayed at Le Pavillon Hotel, like I said, on Saint Dominique, I believe it was called, very close to the Eiffel Tower in the 6th arrondissement. And it was a very interesting experience. I'm gonna give this a perspective from someone who definitely did not take it easy. I landed there and went very, very hard and explored the city and saw a lot of it. So let's talk about kind of the experience as a whole. I will say, maybe just because we're Canadian and we're typically regarded as nicer people and well respected around the world, I didn't really experience sort of that Parisian animosity or condescension that they say that Parisian people have, where they're like rude to foreigners or like talk down on you. I never really experienced that many assholes. Like, of course I saw a couple, but that would be the same thing whether I was in Canada, whether I was in the US, whether I was in Argentina, like wherever it would be. You're always gonna come up against some people who just like to sit in their misery and wallow in a very sad day. Now, despite that, we did go out to a lot of restaurants. I went on a pub crawl. I went to a few nightclubs. I used the metro. We did some tours. We went and saw the Eiffel Tower. We did a river cruise around the Seine. We did a wine and food tour in Montmartre, which is close to the Moulin Rouge. And I apologize again for anyone who does speak French. I'm probably butchering these names. Like I said, it's been a long time since I learned it, and I really can't pronounce them. But if you come anywhere to a Latin America country, I can return the favor of pronouncing things correctly. So, you know, we did a lot of things. We met a lot of people. I met, there's probably like 25 of us on that pub crawl, I would say. So a pretty good mixture of people to chat with and get to know in the city. And my experience was really, really positive, I'll say. So, you know, obviously the people themselves, I think, were very, very friendly. I never had any issues with people being rude to us. Now, with that being said, my dad and I, me especially, and I try to keep him in line with that, are very conscious travelers because of some of the places I've been that are extremely dangerous. And I got used to not drawing attention to myself, not being a dickhead, being very friendly and nice and just kind of going with the flow of what other people are doing. We did see, unfortunately, Americans generally get the brunt of this criticism. When they travel, some people who are from America tend to be kind of assholes and very loud and demanding and rude to wait staff and rude to like people on the street and that kind of thing. And that's when you're gonna get into trouble. So my advice right out the gate is just kind of like swallow your pride a little bit and just try and go with the flow as much as possible and try not to make any more issues for yourself than you have to. I know that's gonna be difficult for some people if you're like just innately maybe aggressive, I guess, or you just maybe like are high maintenance or whatever that is. I'm sorry, just generally that's my advice. Anywhere you travel in the world, if you take that chip off your shoulder, you're going to have a better experience. So we had none of that kind of negativity or abrasion to tourists that we had heard would be popular in Paris. So let's just move past that. In terms of the actual city itself, I had also heard, like, you know, we got here after the garbage, I guess the garbage people strike. So the city itself was actually like pretty clean. I know people have said Paris is pretty dirty. Now, granted, we were in a higher end area, but we walked everywhere across that city, I would say. Like, I walked all the way down to like the entrance to the catacombs, and then all the way back up to Montmartre. So for reference, Paris is actually a fairly small city. It takes about 3 hours to walk top to bottom and then side to side. Not at the same time, I mean, so like 3 hours from point to point and then another 3 hours if you wanted to go side to side. And so it's a fairly small city. So I'd like to say we covered a fair bit of it. Of course, like when we were on our Uber in from the airport, that we saw a little bit of a grungy area on the way in, but that's like, you know, fairly average. Like pretty much every major city has some sort of area that's going to be a little sketchy, a little run down, maybe a little poorer economy in that area. That's kind of just the nature of any large city. You're going to have that disparity between the ultra rich and the ultra poor. That's just human nature. That's how capitalism works, unfortunately. So we never saw it like actively in any of the areas we were in. The cleanliness, I think, was fine. The streets were in good shape. Walkability, I think, like for me, I've talked about this in lots of other videos, a walkable city is like the ideal city for me. And this really fit the bill of a walkable city because I could walk to the gym that I went to. I could go to a grocery store nearby. I could walk to a cafe. I could walk to a co-working space. I could walk to like the nightclub area if I wanted to, where I was staying. So there is a lot of options. Like obviously if you're staying in a far away place, you're not gonna walk 3 hours, so you probably take an Uber. And that's where I would say it is a little annoying to deal with. The traffic is very chaotic. And there's a lot of it, it seemed like all the time. So the Ubers were kind of a pain, and they sometimes took even longer than it would to have walked. It was also fairly hot a couple of the days that we were there, so it was a little difficult to enjoy being stuck in the back of an Uber when it's boiling hot out and your Uber driver with a 4.3 rating won't turn the air conditioning on. Outside of that though, I think it's obviously a very walkable city, which I loved. And then we'll talk about like the food and the nightlife, let's say. So food, obviously, don't really have to explain this too much. Paris, one of the culinary capitals of the world, absolutely awesome food. We went to a lot of places that were like highly recommended. You can do your research before to see like what's trendy or what kind of vibe you like. We typically are like a little bit more like the higher end people. So we went to some fancier places. We went to like Roof Paris, which was, I would say, a little douchey for our taste even. And it was very, very expensive, but an incredible view of the Eiffel Tower and a lot of the basilicas as well. So I think it was worth it, even though it was very, very expensive. We did one of the Michelin restaurants. I don't think they actually have the Michelin star anymore because it's the oldest restaurant in Paris, Le Grand Le Four, or Le Four, I'm not Le Four. And that was the only place I was disappointed by. I think the food was extremely mediocre for that price point. The vibe inside, I get that that's maybe like the style that they're trying to hold on to of this like really old school style restaurant in like a really old building that's been there forever. But for me, it just wasn't that good. I think the food was pretty mediocre. The ambiance was bad. And maybe that's just like me being a youthful person that doesn't really relate to what they're trying to get. But for me, that was definitely not worth the money. But everything else was really, really good. I ended up going on a pub crawl in the Latin Quarter, went to a couple pubs there, and then ended up at a disco. Unfortunately, I do not remember what the name of that place was. I was like sloshed off my face by that point of the night. But ended up having a great time. Metro was easy, Metro was clean, Metro was cheap. I will say the cost of Paris is definitely not that low compared to a lot of other cities you could go to. So with that in mind, potentially on a longer term rental, you may be able to bring the cost down if you're looking at staying for like 3 to 6 months. That's something that maybe could help with the rent costs, and then that way you're not getting just like absolutely rinsed by your rental fee. Safety wise, we didn't really have any issues as well. Like I talked about that a little bit in the cleanliness, but generally it was it felt very safe compared to like some of the places I've been, like in Colombia or Peru, right? Where it's maybe a little bit sketchy, like you can't walk alone at night, you have to take Ubers, that kind of thing. So my bar is like comparing it to that, not necessarily every other city. But I thought it was fine. I walked a lot of the places there. We were really close to the river, so it was like really beautiful walks to go along there as well. We ended up going to two of the boat clubs, which were really cool along the water there. One was called like Flow by Cozy, I think. And then right beside that was like another one that was absolutely packed. I've never seen like a boat party this busy, and this was only at like 10:30 at night. So definitely worth checking out that side of the area. Accessibility wise, we Ubered from the airport. I realized now that I think the RER train system would have been a little bit better. Like I said, I was with my dad, so there's 3 of us, and I didn't really want to overwhelm him with taking trains. Like usually I'm someone who would take like the train or the bus to try and reduce some of that cost. But in this case, I think it was just easier for us to pay the higher premium and just get to where we were going, especially when he was staying at a different hotel. So we actually just Ubered to his, and then I walked from his hotel to mine just to make things a little bit easier for everyone. But overall, I think it was a great time. And the weather there in the winter, like I had asked the tour guide a little while. She was doing like this wine and food tour, so I chatted her up for a bit, and she said in the winter it does get a little bit cold. They do get close to freezing, but the snow doesn't really stick, which is nice. And obviously coming from Canada where it's minus 30 Celsius sometimes, it's obviously anywhere is going to be better than that, I think. But it's such a rich cultural city that has so much history dating back like, hundreds and thousands of years. Paris, right? It's been around forever. So there's so much history and so much you can do there. I would definitely say it's a great city to go check out as a nomad or someone just looking to like stay there for a longer period of time. I was there a while and I still didn't even really make a dent in all the things there is there to do. In terms of fitness culture, kind of pretty similar to most other like Western European cities, I think. Major commercial gyms kind of all over the place in the downtown core. The food scene, because there's so much of it, pretty easy to eat healthy, assuming you're making the right choices with your delivery, you're making the right choices when you go to the grocery store, whatever you're eating. I think it's going to be a pretty easy city to stay fit in. But that said, I didn't really see too many like juice heads in the gyms that I went to. Because everyone walks everywhere, I would say everyone's like moderately in shape compared to like, let's say the US again. Sorry to keep beating a dead horse. But that's pretty much going to be my review of Paris. I think it was a great time. I had a blast. Definitely would go back for a longer period of time and enjoy it a little bit further. I do think the shoulder seasons are likely the best time to go. We went there just at the beginning of September of 2023, and the crowds were really not that bad. We were able to go to the Eiffel Tower fairly easily, and a lot of the tourist attractions weren't like swarmed with people, versus I think like in the true heart of European summer, it would have been pretty busy to do so. So that would be my recommendation. But I hope this video was useful. That is going to pretty much cover my opinion and thoughts on Paris. I had a great time. I would go back. If it was, feel free to leave a like or comment in the section below. Always helps the algorithm. And where should I go next? That's always the question I guess I'm trying to figure out myself. So maybe I should start asking anyone who watches these videos. So hopefully this was useful. As always, my name's Alex. I'll see you in the next one. Peace.